In this third-part video series, we're talking about the steps to starting a profitable parking lot striping business and specifically what kind of equipment that you're going to need. Also, I'm talking about how to get a good setup even if you're working with a limited budget, reasons why utilizing a credit union can work out in your favor, and if you stick around until the end of this video, we're going to be talking about pricing, and if you're having trouble getting larger customers, that could be why. But before we get into that, if you've been thinking about starting a side hustle for some extra cash or even starting a business to quit your job, then this video is for you. Also, if you're someone that's interested in getting some in-person training, that way you can get a better understanding of this trade to help you make a more informed decision about starting in this industry as a business, feel free to check out the second link in the comment section and the description, fill out the form and reach out. That way you could get started with some in-person training. And if not, you can always feel free to check out the How to Stripe course, in that we cover all the necessary aspects to get you started. That will be the first link in the pinned comment section and the description. All right, let's get to the video.
Now, Chris, whenever you first started, some people like to just kind of get going. Was that kind of like your initial thing, got the business licensing and insurance first and foremost, or did you try to do business just like by yourself first to see if it was, something that you could actually do?
So we started the business and then I went in and just bought my equipment. I didn't test the market. I didn't do any extensive research to find out if there were more competitors, which you probably should do. But even if there is, there's nothing wrong with that because you could literally start today and then begin to dominate the market that you're in. So there's no issue there. But when I started, I didn't do any extensive research. I literally just jumped in, started the business, and then got the equipment. And then it's pretty much been fast paced from there.
Which I think is the best way to kind of approach it because, a lot of people kind of start thinking about things and then they get lost in the weeds. And before you know it, it's been months and it was an idea that they were kicking around and they tell their friends and family. It's like, well, I was thinking about starting this. And so I think it's always better to just kind of take action and then ask questions second. But that's just kind of how we like to roll. So perfect, Chris. That was business structure and insurance. Let's go ahead and jump into Ant's question here. What kind of equipment do we need? And how much is it going to cost for us to get started? So first and foremost, Chris, tell us a little bit about how you got started and what you got in the beginning, and then kind of what, how much that cost.
If you're looking to level up and cash in on some big ticket customers, then consider checking out the How to Stripe marketing pack, where people like Garrett that got $18,000 worth of work off of what he learned from the training said, "It's all good, bro, no worries. I've already made $18K this off season in the past month from using your marketing videos. I'm more than satisfied." Or like John that made $15K from the training. He said, "I've landed over $15,000 on 2 jobs in less than a week using the marketing technique you teach in your online course. I'm waiting to hear back from 4 more potential customers who got bids. I can't believe it. By far the cheapest, easiest, and best results I've got from advertising for my company. Thanks for making the course available." Or like Jamie that landed a $34,000 school district. He said, "I'm so happy. Just got confirmed I landed a $36,000 school job. I'm so happy. 7 schools in total starting sometime next week. And right now we're doing a discount for the marketing pack. So if you send me a text message or an email letting me know that you've seen this video and want access to the marketing pack, we can get it to you. That way you can start leveling up and landing bigger customers." All right, let's get back to the video. Right. That's a good question. A lot of people have the misconception that you have to go out and get a $6,000, $10,000 machine in order to do the jobs effectively. We deal with guys all over the nation that call and reach out. Some guys have the best parking lot striping equipment that you could possibly get. And then some guys over here on the other end of the spectrum are starting out with rollers. I know a guy that started out with some traffic paint, some rollers, and some tape. And he made, I think it was $5,100 his very first job. So you can start, right now for a couple $100 and then turn around and make a pretty substantial amount of money in a short period of time. But the equipment that I started off with was the Titan Powerliner 3500. which is a very good machine, very capable machine. And then, of course, as you grow and do jobs and you scale your business, you'll add more machines. So we use Titan and Graco.
Okay, excellent. You guys have kind of reinvested into the business. Obviously, got some, bigger machines that are a little bit more capable of doing larger size parking lots, right, Chris?
Oh yeah, yes sir, most definitely. And as you grow and as you scale, of course, you're not going to be able to go and do massive parking lots with just roller tape and paint. I mean, you could, but it would take you a long time. Whereas if you had a machine, you could just get large parking lots done in a few hours. So
Okay, sweet. So we had another question from Jeremy, and he wants to know, can I start this for free?
if you guys already got your business up and running, but you still don't have a customer contract put in place, that can be very dangerous. That's why we've got a 3-part legal pack that includes a customer contract, change order, as well as a certificate of completion. And you can have access to these documents that I paid an attorney a substantial amount of money for a fraction of the cost. If you want access to the legal pack for 50% off, then all you have to do is send me an email or a text message letting me know that you've seen this in the video, and we'll give you that discount. That way you can be prepared and protected in the case of any problems that may arise. Let's get back to the video.
Now, like you had mentioned, a couple $100 can get you some paint, some rollers, and some tape. Is there any way to start this business for free? I guess, could you get a deposit on that first job and then take that money and roll that into the equipment that you need?
I mean, once you start, you could book the job and then take that deposit and turn around and go get the equipment, of course, for sure. That's definitely one way that you could definitely get the job done and then start for nothing up front, for sure.
Okay, sweet. So it sounds like we kind of got a range here, right, with regards to what equipment we can start with. Obviously, we can start on the side of, spending less money up front, which would be the rollers, the tape, and the paint. And then we could also move into kind of what you did, which was kind of an intermediate parking line striper, right, Chris? How much would you say that was again?
It was about $5,000 to invest. But the thing is a lot of larger companies, and I see this so often, a lot of companies that actually service their customers and they sell the machines, they use these third-party leasing agents. And what happens is they suck guys in for the amount of the machine, and then they tell them, well, you could pay the machine off with one job. And that's true. But then what they don't tell you is that the interest rate on that machine is 20 to 30% of an interest rate. So if you don't get that job, if it doesn't come through, if it does fall through and you're not able to pay that machine off fast, you've got a 30% interest rate that's going to just absolutely crush you. So my advice to guys is utilize your local credit union. I mean, if you're starting on a budget and you don't have a lot of money to invest, if you at least have good credit, you can go to your credit union, you can get a loan, and then you could get the machine. I think I put down maybe $2,000, might have been a little bit under $2,000 for my machine on a 3-year loan on an interest rate that was like 3%. And so if you pay off that loan in a short amount of time, your interest rate is lower. I think I'm paid like $200-$300 in interest in total. So got it done. I got it done and paid off within the first year. So
Okay, excellent. So you're saying that some of these parking lot striping manufacturers might be, getting people a little bit with regards to some of the financing options, huh?
yeah, it would. I don't know if it would necessarily be the manufacturer, but for sure it would be the seller.
Or the
For
seller,
sure,
right.
yeah, it would be
Okay.
the seller because they're pulling these people in and they're creating a vision for them. That's true, but at the end of the day, if you're not able to sell the job and produce the result, you're stuck with the interest rate that you're going to pay more than double for what the machine's worth. So
That's really good, though. I've never actually heard anybody kind of say that you could go the route of the credit union. So that was actually a route that you went. And Chris, are you still paying the machine off, or did you kind of put a whole bunch of money to it to kind of get it paid off, or
yeah. Well, I kept my full-time job before I went full-time and actually striping. I kept my full-time job while I grew my business on the side. So everything that I was able to generate just immediately went back into the business, whether it was marketing, equipment cost, paying for workers, so on and so forth. So that's what I did. And I actually had a 3-year loan and I paid it off in 1 year. And that's the reason why I paid so little in interest. So that's kind of the way that we did it. And now I have an open line of credit with them. So if I want to go get a whole nother setup, they know that I'm going to pay it back. I'm going to pay it back faster than the loan amount. So it's always good to do that, because then you build relationships and then you establish yourself as a trustworthy business owner and then people trust you, and then they want to do business with you. So.
Right, and then not to mention you start building business credit, and then like you said, whenever you need to go back, you need to get another machine. You definitely can do that. I think that's another interesting part of your story, Chris, that I want to touch on is how you kind of quit your job and went full time into this. Because one thing that I think a lot of people kind of struggle with early on or make the mistake with is trying to just jump straight into it and not trying to kind of pace their way in. Before we get into that though, just to kind of cover all of the equipment section, the other thing is stencils. And so is stencils something that guys need to invest early on into, or can, like, we've taped some stencils, but man, let me tell you, taping some stencils can take you a long time. So what would you recommend with regards to that?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I've had guys reach out to me and they've got people where they're trying to sell them extensive stencil packages for several $1,000s. And in all reality, you're going to need a handicap stencil and you're going to need a 4-inch fire lane stencil. So fire lane, no parking, and then a handicap stencil. Those two stencils, and a directional arrow. So you're going to need a handicap stencil, a fire lane stencil, and then a directional arrow. With those three, you can make a bunch of money, and it'll be a while, especially if you're just starting out before someone starts calling you to receive custom stencil orders.
Okay, perfect, Chris. And so, where would be the best place to kind of get some of these things at? Because I know that there's a couple different spots online that we can get, striping machines, stencils at. Where would you recommend for guys, or, do you have any recommendation for them?
Yeah, I mean, what I would do and what we've used is 1-800-STENCIL, 1-800-STENCIL.com. We use them. There's same-day stencils. There are all sorts of places that you can go to. I got a friend of mine whose name is Bill. He makes his own stencils. And so you could really be creative with it. But I would definitely look up a service provider in your area, because if you could keep the shipping costs down and then just buy local, that's what's going to save you money and be cheaper for you in the long run.
Okay, beautiful, Chris. We got a couple other questions in here that we're going to get into. So we kind of covered equipment there. I think, one of the things with regards to stencils that I don't think a lot of people know about, and you won't know until you get on site, is that stencils are actually different. So like we've had like a lot of handicap stencils. Like we purchased one and it ended up being too small, and they just range in size pretty dramatically. So that's one of the things you kind of have to contest with. And I know, Chris, that you do work specifically for Canes, and they have their own specific set of stencils, right?
Yeah, they have a specific stencil kit. And so if you were to go out and buy that stencil kit, it'd be close to like $2,000, because the striping and the stencils are so massive for these properties. And that is a negative aspect. I will say that, because you might do a Scooter's Coffee, right? And we all know how small Scooters are. Well, their stencil kit is $1,000. So unless you're taking on an entire franchise with 10, 15, 20 locations, a $1,000 stencil kit for a $400 job is not financially responsible. So there is a negative aspect, because they're not universal as far as the stencil sizes, and every place, McDonald's has their own stencil kit, Cane's, Burger King, these fast food chains. So that is a negative aspect, but once you get in with them and you actually purchase the stencil kits, it's pretty much smooth sailing from there.
Okay, beautiful. You would think that would be something that would be like mandated, that everybody would kind of have the same size, but I guess maybe it just isn't. So now that we kind of covered equipment, all the aspects of it, even the stencils that we need, let's kind of go ahead and move into paint. So Wright's Pressure Washing says, what kind of paint do we need? What kind's best, water-based or oil-based?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually deal with this a lot. When you're first starting out, everyone starts out with water-based, right? I mean, they start out with a latex paint, and that's okay. It's definitely has its uses. I mean, if you're brand new and you're not really good with engaging your trigger mechanism, you're going to want to start with a water paint, because it's easy to clean up, because you don't want your lines to be different lengths on every single line. So starting with a latex paint is what I would do. If I'm just getting into it, start with water-based paint, get familiar with the consistency, how to use it, and then I would switch over to a solvent-based paint. That's what we use. We use solvent, and I love it. My machines run solvent all day.
Okay, beautiful. Another thing is like specific machines run specific different types of paints, and this was something that Chris made me aware of, and this is something that we go deeper in the How to Stripe course. So if you guys haven't already, check it out. First link in the comment section and the description. It comes with all this stuff. It's over 8 hours of training. Get LSP certified, as well as you guys are going to get the pricing guide if you go ahead and jump in today. So, and you're going to be able to take that with you, a PDF. So we're actually going to go through pricing here in just a second, but it's incredibly helpful to be on site with a pricing guide and be able to kind of refer to that as you're putting together your estimate. So with regards to paint, Chris, anything else we kind of want to cover with paint? I mean, does the people that supply it matter? Like, should we go to, can you get it from a paint store, Sherwin-Williams? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Sherwin-Williams is pretty much the go-to. There's also Centerline and Transline. But for the most part, I would either go to Sherwin-Williams or Centerline or Transline, because I have found that they have the most durable quality of paint for the best price. There are a lot of people out there that have the same base of paint that may be a lot cheaper, and though that may be nice as far as reducing costs, but if you offer a better quality of paint, then you're going to give your customers the maximum results possible. So there are cheaper options, but for us, we're either using Sherwin-Williams, Centerline, or Transline.
Okay, so I think this is the perfect segue to this next question, Chris, and that is, how much are we charging? I know you had a specific instance recently with a Sonic parking lot that you had undercharged on, and you had to actually use like worse paint than what you would typically use. So maybe we can kind of like talk a little bit as to the average ticket on, parking lot striping, as well as like what the minimum price is that you're, willing to charge. I do want to say this before you get into it though. I actually put together a whole video talking you guys through the most popular services that companies are going to want you to come out and stripe, as well as pricing for each of those. So I'll try to leave a link for that in the comment section and the description, because that's like a 20-minute in-depth video on pricing. But Chris, if you can, talk about the Sonic issue, how you had to use, lesser paint because it was a cheaper job, average ticket, and minimum pricing.
Sure. Well, what happened was whenever I first got started, I wanted to try to accumulate a lot of customers in the shortest amount of time to consolidate my effort and then get a customer. And so what happened is I negotiated a set price for all the properties, which if it's a Sonic that has 10 lines, I mean, it's pretty good, right? I mean, to get that minimum charge. And I wouldn't even if it's 1 line or 10 lines, I wouldn't set up the trailer and then do the mobilization and go to the job and even load up the machine if it's not for $500. I mean, that's the minimum. But, whenever I was just starting out, we negotiated a minimum price that was below that 500. And then so what it did was it contractually locked me into an agreement with somebody, and I didn't verify all of the properties. So I just looked at a few and I was like, okay, the ones that I looked at are pretty small, so it's not that big of a deal. But then whenever I actually started pulling up at these other properties, I realized like, oh, some of these Sonic locations have a substantial amount of striping. There's fire lane, lines everywhere. So in a situation like that, you may have to use a cheaper paint, because if it's going to take 15 gallons of paint and you're charged $144 a gallon, you're looking at close to $420 just in your supply cost for the paint. That's not including labor. And then if you're locked in to where you're making just right under $500, you're just breaking even. So if you use a cheaper paint, you may have more profits, but ultimately the goal is to use the best paint possible.